Tonight, the tragic toll of intimate partner violence in Canada. A crisis of epidemic proportions and the calls for change.
We are failing women, we're failing families.
A victim's daughter shares her pain.
It's heartbreaking. It's just something that nobody should have to experience.
The dangers of drinking alcohol, why some are calling for new labels. And newborns' poison blood prompts an urgent appeal from First Nations communities.
I don't want any of my other kids to go through the same thing that she's been through.
And elimination frustration, what it means for the future of Canadian junior hockey. Plus, brick by brick, Calgary returns Olympic Plaza keepsakes.
The intent wasn't that they were going to be removed.
Sentimental salvagers scoop up thousands of stone souvenirs.
We participated. We were a part of the game.
CTV National News with Heather Butts.
Good evening. Communities on both sides of the country are reeling tonight at the end of a week where we have seen a number of people killed in cases of domestic violence. The murders in both Calgary and Halifax adding to the tragic toll of a crisis some deem an epidemic. CTV's Sarah Plowman has more.
Always smiling and laughing. That was Coralie Smith, the mother of two and daughter of Bradford Downey, a guy who'd give you the shirt off his back, friends say. Smith's boyfriend shot them both in Halifax on New Year's Eve, and then police say the shooter killed himself.
It's been a tragic shock to us what has happened. Two nice people didn't deserve this fate.
It's Nova Scotia's fourth murder-suicide linked to intimate partner violence in as many months. The family of Brenda Tadlock-Burke says she wanted to leave her husband, a retired RCMP officer. In October, he killed her and then himself. Her daughter says at first RCMP didn't call it intimate partner violence until she went to the media.
People of intimate partner violence are already shamed while they're living it. And then even in the death of it, it was hidden and kept from people. And I wanted there to be transparency.
In New Brunswick Friday, the first court appearance for a man accused of killing his wife. This week in Calgary, a father and daughter murdered. Police say the woman's husband killed them. Her family says she too wanted to leave.
There was a little family argument, and that kind of for her was the last straw.
While Calgary police said it was domestic in nature, they fell short of calling it intimate partner violence.
Every 48 hours in this country, a woman or girl is killed in Canada.
Ontario designated November Women Abuse Prevention Month. This after spikes in intimate partner violence in some regions like Brampton and Mississauga. In 2023, there was an average of 44 incidents reported daily. A few months ago, Nova Scotia declared domestic violence an epidemic, which was applauded by advocates who now say what's happened in recent months is unparalleled.
We're failing. We are failing women. We're failing families. We are not doing enough, and we are not doing the right things to address what is an epidemic.
Declaring intimate partner violence as an epidemic or emergency is not just about language. People we spoke with say it's about recognizing there's a crisis that requires immediate attention. Heather.
Sarah, thank you for this. The latest numbers show intimate partner violence is a rising problem in Canada. There were over 123,000 cases in 2023. That's an increase of 13% in just 5 years. 78% of the victims are women, and the real numbers are likely even higher since this data only shows incidents reported to police. A Calgary woman grieving her husband's death during a diving trip in Mexico is also now dealing with the complicated and costly ordeal of returning home. Here's CTV's Tyson Fedor.
The Boyds were certified open water divers and excited for their annual Christmas trip to Mexico, but this time, tragedy hit. 56-year-old Glenn Boyd, pictured here on the December 15th flight to Cancun, suddenly died after a dive.
I could tell he was struggling to breathe when we were going up. And we just couldn't get him out of the water.
Christine Boyd has been stranded in Mexico since his death December 20th. She believes her husband had a heart attack, but is waiting for the autopsy results. Despite paying $6,500 for Glenn's ashes and a death certificate, both remain with Mexican authorities, and she still can't believe any of it.
And I'm going to turn around and he's going to be there.
Glenn booked the trip through Expedia on his credit card. They are expected to return December 27th, but she's still there, waiting for his remains and the paperwork. Christine called WestJet, Expedia, as well as Glenn's credit card company, but his death complicated the compensation process and her access to his account.
Disconnected 3 times. So it took me over 2 days of consistently trying to call them. And the message I got was, oh, you booked through Expedia. There's nothing we can do for you. Bye. And I have not been able to reach Expedia.
Christine's daughter Megan in Calgary says she has also been trying to contact the companies.
It's just been, one expense after another, and trying to really keep up with that and get mom home.
There was no compassion, nothing. When I called them and told them my father passed away on a trip he purchased through them, they did not care.
After CTV News contacted both companies this week, WestJet says it will accommodate Christine on a flight home when she is ready with Glenn's remains and at no charge. Meantime, Expedia says it's trying to contact Christine and plans to refund the return trip she missed last month. Tyson Fedor, CTV News, Calgary.
An American found guilty of participating in the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol is avoiding his sentence in Whistler. He's trying to claim asylum in B.C. while awaiting a pardon from U.S. President-elect Donald Trump. The case has much broader implications for other potential asylum seekers. CTV's Penny Daflos reports.
At one of the most desirable ski resorts in the world, a U.S. citizen is dodging a jail sentence.
Do you consider yourself a fugitive is the big question.
Yeah, but I'm also, I think by definition, a convention refugee.
Anthony Vo acknowledges he was at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, and has publicly posted photos from that day with his mom. But he says the 9-month jail sentence is unfair and he's in the process of seeking asylum.
I'm in Canada because I'm being politically persecuted by the Biden regime in America. They want to put me in prison for me, it was a totally peaceful protest.
Vo claims he expected adequate security that day and was supporting the president he continues to admire.
Trump requested for people to come to Washington, D.C. on January 6th for the Stop the Steal rally.
And insists that neither he nor his mom did anything wrong.
It's no surprise at all that one of those rioters would want to come to Canada and buy 4 years of freedom just for crossing the border.
Because that's how long the wait is for an asylum hearing. So while Trump has promised to pardon rioters as soon as he's back in office,
it's not only the Capitol Hill rioters, but it's going to be those 11 million people that President Trump wants to remove from U.S. soil. They may well find their way caravan style into Canada in the near future, hoping to wait out the Trump administration.
Vo is looking forward to January 20th when Trump is sworn into office again.
He is the only president in my lifetime that has ended wars and started no new wars.
And expects to go home without fear of arrest soon after. Penny Daflos, CTV News, Whistler.
Some new developments today in the hush money case against Donald Trump. A New York judge is ordering Trump to appear for sentencing next Friday, either in person or virtually. This comes as Trump's appeal to dismiss the case was denied. However, the judge also signaled Trump won't face any jail time. And Donald Trump's choice for House Speaker was reelected to that role on Capitol Hill today.
The Honorable Mike Johnson of the state of Louisiana has received 218.
A narrow margin of victory, but nonetheless a big win for Republicans after Johnson came up short by just 2 votes on the first ballot. But after some negotiations and reportedly some phone calls from Trump to the holdouts, he got the votes he needed. With the House Speaker elected, Congress will move ahead to certify Trump's presidential win on Monday, January 6th, with a ramped-up security presence around Capitol Hill. After a week out west with his family, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is back in Ottawa. He has yet to address the pressure he's facing to resign. And CTV News has learned a special meeting of the National Liberal caucus is planned for next week. CTV's Rachel Aiello has the details.
Justin Trudeau was back at work today.
But with the Prime Minister yet to address the snowballing calls for his resignation, regional Liberal caucus chairs met today with National Chair Brenda Shanahan. In the virtual meeting of top Liberals, there was a push for all of caucus to have a conversation about Trudeau's future. And sources say a special meeting will be held next Wednesday. Some MPs want the PM to be more formally asked to go. Others are seeking at least a timeline on when Trudeau will decide whether he intends to stay on.
Time is of the essence.
This comes as calls for the Prime Minister to step aside came from MPs across the country over the holidays. On Parliament Hill today, calling for strong leadership to counter U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, Green Party leader Elizabeth May said Trudeau's position is tenuous and said clearly the Prime Minister and his party have to consider his continued role.
I'm not in his shoes, and I think that the resignation of Chrystia Freeland and the circumstances under which she was dismissed from his cabinet right before the fall economic statement calls into question Justin Trudeau's judgment.
With now just 17 days until Trump takes office, today the Prime Minister attended a midday meeting of the Cabinet Committee on Canada-U.S. Relations. But while Trudeau tries to show the government is functioning, some Liberals say the party is already contemplating the timing and process for a leadership race.
There's a very spirited discussion happening on behind the scenes within the Liberal Party as to how to select the next leader. People are already looking past the Prime Minister.
As the country waits to hear whether Trudeau intends to stay or go, late tonight, another Liberal has added his name to the growing list calling for him to resign. In a letter, Winnipeg Liberal MP Ben Carr said he thinks it's time the party head in a new direction. Heather?
All right, Rachel, thank you for this. And we're learning more today about Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's vision for Canada. In a lengthy 90-minute interview with media personality Jordan Peterson, he outlined goals and strategy. As he enters an election year riding high in public opinion polls, he doesn't expect problems to be fixed instantaneously after an election.
I'm going to have to put out a call to Canadians that they have to stay politically active. They can't assume that simply by changing, by voting in an election, that everything is going to, all the problems are going to reverse instantaneously.
America's top doctor, concerned about alcohol consumption and cancer risks, is calling for health warning labels on alcoholic drinks, similar to what's on packs of cigarettes. Here's CTV's Mike LeCouture on the new research and if Canada should consider the change.
It's more than dry January for Jack Barkley. He hasn't had alcohol for 3 years. There are a number of reasons he stopped drinking, but as a healthcare professional, the link between alcohol and cancer was one of them.
A lot of people in my family have a history of diabetes, liver disease, various forms of that, and cancer. And I know that does play a role in, with alcohol, it increases those risks of certain comorbidities.
Those risks have been even more clearly laid out by a new U.S. Surgeon General advisory on alcohol consumption and the link to cancer. In a 22-page advisory, Dr. Vivek Murthy said, for certain cancers like breast, mouth, and throat cancers, evidence shows that this risk may start to increase around 1 or fewer drinks per day. Murthy is even calling for updated health warning labels on alcohol containers. But some doubt it will change habits.
Just like cigarettes, it's not going to stop everybody from smoking. It's not going to stop everybody from drinking.
Canadian researchers have conducted a real-world evaluation of warning labels on alcohol containers. They point out even some packaged foods will have that type of health information on them in 2026.
Yet alcohol containers are exempt from these warning label regulations, so there definitely is a strong opportunity to strengthen warning label regulations in the country.
The Canadian Cancer Society agrees and would like to see similar labeling like what started on cigarette packages.
Only 40% of Canadians are aware that there's a link between alcohol and cancer risk, so a report like this really puts the attention on an important topic.
Health Canada has yet to comment on the U.S. Surgeon General's new advisory. However, in 2023, the Canadian Centre on Substance Use and Addiction did publish guidance on alcohol and health. It said you're considered at low risk if you have 1 to 2 drinks per week. Heather?
CTV's Mike LeCouture in Ottawa. Coming up, health risks inside the home.
fed up. I think that people are frustrated.
A mother's urgent plea for help to fix a problem growing within. Excessive mold has been a persistent problem in Canada's First Nations communities, often creating health issues. A young baby from northern Manitoba was recently hospitalized due to a respiratory illness from mold in her home. CTV's Alex Karpa has more.
2-month-old Memory Cologne was taken to Winnipeg's Health Sciences Centre just before Christmas, where the family was told her blood became contaminated from the mold in her home.
It's really scary. I don't want any of my other kids to go through the same thing that she's been through.
House mold is a major issue in Castell's community of Puckatawagan in northern Manitoba. She says she has brought up the issue before, but nothing has been done to fix the worsening problem.
I was really angry. I'm scared if I lost my baby.
Pediatric respirologist Dr. Tom Cavesi says clean air is a major problem in Indigenous communities. He was part of a study that included 4 isolated First Nations communities in Northern Ontario and says these types of mold problems are often caused by poor ventilation.
Mold increases the amount of inflammation in your airways, and then you add a viral infection on top of it, and it's kind of like getting 2 hurricanes at the same time. And one of the important issues is we know that mold is closely related to inadequate housing in First Nations communities.
First Nations leaders are frustrated with the lack of action from both provincial and federal governments.
We have to have some kind of movement to correct this issue. It's something that can be fixed. It's that the political will is not there, and it's tragic that young children are now being affected.
Castell says she just wants to see change.
Really sad that my kids have to live like that.
Advocates continue to call on the federal government to build more homes and provide more funding to maintain those homes in First Nations communities, saying the health of First Nations children is at stake. Alex Karpa, CTV News, Winnipeg.
A pilot and his 16-year-old daughter are dead after their plane crashed through the roof of a factory in Southern California with about 200 workers inside.
Today, this plane going down here, and I said, oh, one day it's gonna fall down in our roof, and I think today's the day.
The plane had taken off from Fullerton Airport just 2 minutes earlier and was coming back for an emergency landing. But before the pilot could reach the runway, the plane barreled into the factory and exploded in a ball of fire. 19 people inside were injured. The cause of the crash is under investigation. Still ahead, a national heartbreak.
We make a mistake in the architecture of this team.
What went wrong for Canada and what it means for a hockey nation on the world stage. Canadian hockey fans are reeling after a second straight early exit at the World Juniors. The disappointing result has raised questions on whether Canada should tweak its game plan to gain back its international glory. Here's CTV's Kamal Karamali.
Here's it, feeds it back across, Hippo scores! This is the goal that shattered countless hearts Thursday night. Canada fouls out in the quarters, ending Canada's dream of advancing in the World Juniors tournament.
Yeah, it just sucks. I mean, hurts a lot.
It's the second year in a row the team has lost to Czechia in the quarterfinals. Both losses combined mark the first time Canada has failed to finish in the top 4 in back-to-back tournaments in more than 40 years.
We went to a national program in 1982, and this is the first time since then that we have finished back-to-back years out of medal contention.
This year's team had been criticized from the start for not including some star-caliber Canadian prospects.
I mean, we're talking about top 10 NHL draft picks. That's where it starts. You know, did we make a mistake in the architecture of this team?
But this loss also highlighting how good other countries have become at developing athletes.
The United States has the national development programs. Sweden has their international programs. And I think Canada's almost become too watered down at the top level of junior hockey.
By watered down, he means this: hundreds of players spanning 60 teams across the Canadian Hockey League, diluting the prospect pool.
But when you look at the US, they take their best players, they put them in one training camp, and for their under 17 and under 18 years, they play in one team together.
So the question now, should Canada change how it develops its players?
I don't think it's about a general lack of talent and we have to reassess the program and throw everything we know out the window. It's just 2 bad years.
Hockey Canada will get some clearer answers when the NHL holds its Four Nations face-off in mid-February. If Canada loses there, it's sure to increase calls for a complete revamp of its player development program. Heather.
Kamal, thank you. The latest sporting superstar in Britain is a teenager who today became the youngest world darts champion in history. 17-year-old Luke Littler took the title in London. He threw his first dart as an 18-month-old toddler, and his rapid rise has lifted the sport back into the mainstream in the UK. Look at that glory. Well, still ahead, Olympic glory. Calgarians finally take home a piece of history. The city of Calgary is in the process of returning iconic Olympic history from a venue that was once used for medal ceremonies nearly 40 years ago. CTV's Tyler Barrow has more on the thousands of bricks heading to a new home.
By the thousands, salvage bricks from the Olympic Plaza lie across the floor in the Stampede Park's agricultural building. Stephen Crosby says one way or another, he was going to get his. But he is happy he didn't have to pry it out from the ground like many others did.
The brick is a souvenir that says we participated. We were a part of the game.
Gail Ennis has 3 bricks bearing the names of her late husband as well as her son and daughter.
I thought it would be great to contribute to the Olympics. I'm very pleased that we got all 3 bricks. It's wonderful.
It was no easy process. Back in August, the Calgary Municipal Land Corporation, which is overseeing the project, initially said saving the bricks was not feasible. But after public pushback and people taking it upon themselves, the city announced in December some of the 33,000 bricks would be saved.
At the last moment, we saw an opportunity in time between festivals and closing of the plaza where we could attempt to remove some of the bricks.
8,000 bricks were registered of the 33,000 across the plaza. Approximately 5,600 were successfully removed. The city said environmental factors and original placement locations made it impossible for many others to be salvaged.
When they were put in almost 40 years ago, the intent wasn't that they were going to be removed.
And for people like Andy Fahy, who is happy one of his bricks was able to be saved,
I'm very excited. They're going to go into my patio.
However, another he'd hoped to send to his daughter in Florida couldn't be successfully removed. Tyler Barrow, CTV News, Calgary.
And that's a unique piece of history. And that is our newscast for this Friday night. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. I'm Heather Butts. Good night, and I'll see you again tomorrow.